Now, it's been a fantastic weekend for the country, uniting to celebrate 70 years of rule from Her Majesty the Queen, and indeed all things British. In an article written this weekend, Shadow Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, Lucy Powell MP, argued that the Labour Party, rather than the Conservatives, now enshrine those patriotic principles. Paul, did you have a chance to look at the article and what did you make of it?
I did. I thought it was welcome, Arlene. I think it's a step on the right path. There's no question that the Labour Party has been seen over recent years as unpatriotic. I think some in the Labour Party would attribute that just to the period of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. I think that would be a mistake, actually. I think you can trace it back several years before that. I think there was an element in the Labour Party that became very dominant, the liberal left, if you like, who did sneer at traditional ideals such as patriotism, who did sneer at people, including Labour voters actually, in working class communities who held what you might call small c conservative attitudes around things like patriotism and believing in control of immigration, believing in things like the nuclear family, loving their country, etc. The Labour Party increasingly over the years, and I saw this as someone involved with the Labour Party, looked down at people like that, denigrated people like that. You think of people like Gillian Duffy, for example, somebody who voted Labour all of her life, but simply because she expressed concerns over the level of immigration was dismissed by a Labour Prime Minister as being a bigoted old lady. So I welcome the intervention of Lucy. I think the article was good, but I would say that it's going to take a hell of a lot more than just a leader standing in front of the Union flag and a few articles in The Guardian about patriotism to convince lost voters, Labour's lost voters, and there are millions of them, that the Labour Party does really love this country and does understand the sort of very understated patriotism that often motivates those voters and those communities.
And we've seen some of that very much over the weekend, Paul, and we'll talk about that later. But I'm delighted to say that Lucy Powell now joins us, and we're going to talk about that article. Lucy, what inspired you to write this article about Britishness and about patriotism?
Well, I think Paul's absolutely right. I think as the Labour Party haven't always looked comfortable with some of these issues in the past. But as a party, I really do strongly believe that we enshrine many of the values, the traditions, the vision for the future and the support of our British institutions, much valued British institutions, that all make our country great. And I think I wanted to try and set some of that out in an article today, on a weekend where we are all showing that fantastic togetherness, coming together, celebrating what is the very best of Britain that's on show for the world. And look, I would agree with Paul too in the sense that this is something that we have to relentlessly and continuously show that we are a party that does love our country and loves those traditions and those values that we hold dear. But we also want to see a country that's got a better future ahead of it than perhaps it's always had in the past.
And I have to say, I very much like that positive element that we were looking to the future and we were confident about who we are, and that very much struck me. But before I bring Paul back in again, Lucy, obviously coming from Northern Ireland, you can understand why I would be somewhat sceptical about the Labour Party and their Britishness, because, of course, there are members of your party that don't subscribe to Northern Ireland, for example, having representation from the Labour movement. And indeed, some members don't even say the phrase Northern Ireland, they call it the North of Ireland. So it will take a lot more to convince people that the Labour Party really is the party for the whole of the UK.
Well, and we have to be for all parts of the UK, absolutely. And Northern Ireland, I'm not going to debate with you, Arlene. You know much better than I do the politics of Northern Ireland and the issues in Northern Ireland. But we take very seriously our role as the honest broker in that situation, as the hopefully as the party that could be the government of the UK, and that would be something we would take very seriously indeed. But as you point out, that patriotic feeling stretches right across the UK. And what I wanted to try and set out was that I do believe that our best days can be ahead of us, not just behind us, and that patriotism can't just be something that just celebrates our past or harks back to a time in the past. It has to be about how Britain can lead and be successful in this ever-changing and very quickly changing sort of global situation. And we've seen that, haven't we, in recent years, really come to the fore with Brexit, COVID, war in Ukraine, really a different sense about national resilience and national economies as well. And I think I want the Labour Party, and I think the Labour Party is at the forefront of those debates.
Paul, you had a question.
Yeah, Lucy, I was struck by what you said in your article about the importance of not rising to the culture wars, and I understand that. But what I would say is, isn't it true that, frankly, people on our side of politics, on the left, have to accept that we, in many respects, began those culture wars for the reasons that I said at the outset, that actually we did look upon traditional values and traditional communities as reactionary and bigoted, and we treated voters in those communities effectively like embarrassing elderly relatives. And it was those people who felt that their values and their culture, if you like, was under attack. So I know it's kind of a bit fashionable for people on the left now to say, well, the Tories are responsible for the culture wars. In truth, I think it can be traced to us largely, can't it?
I would agree with you in the sense that, I think culturally there has been, a growing gap. It's not just been an electoral or an economic gap. The reasons that we lost the 2019 elections so profoundly had been coming for many, many years. And you and I have discussed this in the past, Paul. It wasn't just an event of 2019. It was the Red Wall really was crumbling for 20 years, I think, if you like. And it's many of my own relatives that you're describing as well, and I certainly don't see them as embarrassing to me. And it was one of the reasons why I took the view that we really did need to respect the outcome of the Brexit referendum. We cannot sort of be aspiring to be a party of government, aspiring to be a party that represents traditional working class communities if we don't respect people's say, people's views, and people's choices. And I think that what I know from many of those voters that turned against us in recent years is that they want to see change in their lives, they want to see change in their communities, they want to see a better economic outlook for themselves and their families, and that's not something that the economy as it's set up at the moment is really doing for people. And if the Labour Party is to be anything, we have to be for that transformational economic change, bringing good jobs to every community, supporting workers' rights, good, decent housing that everybody can aspire to either own or live in. And these are core Labour values that I think will resonate if we can express them in the right way. And as you say, not look like we're looking down on people or thinking that people are either thick or racist, because they're not.
Well, just before I let you go, Lucy, it would be remiss of me not to ask you, how have you been celebrating this weekend? Have you been out and about yourself, or are you in your constituency, or are you down here in London?
Yeah, no, I've been out and about in Manchester this weekend, some fantastic events, really we had the great weather yesterday. It's now pouring down today, so thankfully a lot of those seemed to happen yesterday and the day before, and it's been lovely to see people from all backgrounds, all types of people out coming together, waving their Union Jack flags and celebrating the monarch's reign. And I've been really trying to get my kids involved in it as well, because I don't think they appreciate how historically significant it is, and it might be many, many years before they see another Jubilee at all happening in this country. So we have to savour this moment, I think, for what it is.
Well, thanks, Lucy, and thanks very much for coming on this morning to discuss your article on the Labour Party and Britishness. Thank you.